Welcome to OutWithDan, the podcast that spotlights and examines the voices of LGBTQ+ authors, characters, and our allies. Together, we lift our voices and we tell our stories. I'm Dan White. Join me as I chat with this week's author. Hello and welcome back to Out with Dan. Today I'm excited to talk to internationally acclaimed artist and now author Juano Diaz about, oh, it's not going to show up, SLUM BOY. There it is. There's that wonderful cover. Welcome, Juano.
Hi, Dan. How are you?
I'm wonderful, thank you. How are you?
I'm really good. I'm in my studio trying to be creative, so
I love it. Well, let's make a little magic together, shall we?
let's do it.
So, I always feel so strange in asking this question, but why this book now?
So I started writing when I was living in New York with Joey Arias. I was living with Joey, and I having the distance from Scotland made me crave a period of my life when I was coming out as a young man. So I started to write this screenplay based around my coming out story. And it was pretty dark because my dad kicked me out of my house. In the process, I moved back to the UK, and because I met my wonderful partner, David, and we started to go through the adoption process to adopt our own son. And I think that process just made me want to tell my story. So it felt like the right time. That was kind of during the pandemic.
Oh, wow. Yeah, when I think all of us were reflecting on life and not realizing whether we would live or not, and I hate to sound overly dramatic, but I think it was a concern, so wow. So I was really struck by the fact that I think we all as humans get a cast of characters in our life, but my heavens, did you really get a cast of characters in your life? I mean, I don't think you missed one colorful human in your life, did you?
No, I think I got them all.
I agree. So start out by giving the audience a little bit of an overview of where you grew up and part of what made this book a reality.
Okay, so I grew up in Scotland, just outside of Glasgow. My life started out in the slums. Now, some Scottish people have a problem with that word, me calling Glasgow a slum, but it was a slum for me. My bedroom window had no glass. There was weeds growing up into the room. It was thick with black mold. We were poor. My mother was a street worker, so to fund her addiction, she was an alcoholic. And so I was adopted. I was taken from her by the authorities many times and then put back, and they would take back. There was this back and forward. And eventually I was put in a children's home and adopted from there by an amazing family who I call my parents. And my father's from the gypsy community, and my mother was Catholic. She's now passed. So I had this kind of huge culture shock as a young boy to be put into this completely different culture and learn a different language, because my father spoke what's called Scots Cant, which is a Scots Roma language. And I just threw myself into it. These people really loved me, and they taught me a lot about music and story and art and dance. And the women would go out doing tarot cards, and the men would hand color photographs. So I took a lot from that. But my father was a scrap metal merchant, so he had scrap yards, and I was expected, to take over that business and be a man. And so from a very early age, I was in a scrapyard stripping cable with a knife, and in a boxing gym. And I just fought against it because I'm gay and I'm a creative. I have creativity connected to my core. And I just kind of fought fought against my parents, and yeah.
Well, and you know, it was so interesting because I thought to myself of all the families to get adopted into, and
Yeah.
I don't want to be unkind to your adoptive parents, but they really wanted you to forget your past and where you had come from. And you know, that is how we learn as humans. We need to know who we are and where we come from, especially for a queer child who is doubly trying to find themselves.
Yeah.
You were trying to find your natural family, your birth family, and you were trying to find yourself as Juano Diaz, and you were trying to fit in. And I sort of had a little chuckle because I thought your adoptive parents were really quite different. They came from really different backgrounds, and I was a little surprised that your dad's family didn't maybe embrace you more, or at least
They embraced me, but they didn't want me to look back at my past, and they didn't want to acknowledge my past, and there was no conversations. One thing I learned being an adoptive parent is that it's so important to be honest with your child. If you're, if my child comes to me and says, I miss my mummy, the first thing I'm going to do is, let's talk about it. Let's talk about your memories. Let's talk about your feelings. I didn't have that opportunity. It was different times. This was the 80s in Glasgow, and my parents are very, very proud people. They just wanted me to forget the past, and they thought that that was the way forward. And anyone knows that's not the way forward for a child.
no, it truly isn't, because children need to learn, and I think children are natural sponges. You know, they suck up what's around them, because we also have to navigate learning to fit in, no matter who we are. Every child has to learn to fit into the world that they're in, and I was just really blown away. One phrase that came up a couple of times I noticed was, "You're a McDonald now," and
Yes.
you know, no matter how many times you tell a child you identify that child as something or someone, the child doesn't necessarily identify the same way as an adult does. And then you want to rebel because it's like, I don't fit this mold.
That's right. That's right. Like I say, I was 7 years old when they adopted me, so I had lots of memories. I remembered my mother. I remembered some horrific things that happened when I was a kid with her, and I remember a lot of chaos. So I needed to speak about that, and there was no opportunity. I needed to understand what had happened. And it also meant that when my adoptive parents were berating me for being naughty, which I was, by the way, because of what I'd been through, when they did berate me, it drove me further away. It frightened me because I'd seen that previously. And they had no kind of reference to why I was behaving the way I was. They thought something was wrong with me, and the thing that was wrong with me was them not giving me that space to be myself and understand and speak about what happened. And luckily, I found that space through art, and that's why I do what I do.
Well, and I tell you, you bared your soul in this, and to a degree that when your publicist came to me with the recommendation of your book, she said, make sure you have your tissues close by. And she was not wrong about that. I mean, it is dealt with such honesty, such brutal honesty. And I think, when a child is born to an addictive parent, the child tries so hard to fix that broken relationship, because that's what children naturally do. They want to fix things. And so I just, in reading this, I mean, your mom's addiction was fueled by a lifestyle that fueled the addiction. And I mean, I felt so much for your birth mother, because she was fighting so many demons that, of course, could only be passed on to you in the fact that it's the life you had growing up when you were very small.
The thing about it is, Dan, is that she didn't stand a chance geographically. She was born into, poverty, and she'd seen some things in her own childhood. She was also undiagnosed with autism, and I don't know if we're allowed to say that anymore. It keeps changing, and you sometimes you're allowed to say things, then you're not. But I'm going to say autism. She was born with autism and she was diagnosed very late in her life. But when she was a kid, she was just called a stupid, and hit by her mother. So, you know, it really affected her. You know, she wasn't in a place to look after herself, never mind her child. And she tried a lot of times to kind of hold on to me and my sisters as well. But she just wasn't able to do it.
And I know that, you know, I know with addiction comes a lot of internal guilt. And then you have to, that usually is fed by the addiction. So it's a vicious cycle. And without proper care, it couldn't have really been any other way. You know, I think a lot of people say, oh, well, just make a change in your life. Well, if you're born into abject poverty, what does that mean? Rob a bank? I mean, you can't just make money appear from nowhere.
That's right.
And so do you, because I'm a curious person, so do you ever see any of the people who were in a children's home with you? Do you have any contact with any of them?
I do. I keep in contact with one boy who he's now the head guy at Hasbro BMX bikes in California, I think.
Okay.
And we speak from time to time. And I remember him, and I remember his sister, and his sister is actually in the book also. I forget what name I gave her, because everyone's names were changed for legal reasons. But yeah, I speak to him, and a lot of people have reached out to me since the book's come out. Other people that were in care, not necessarily with me, but other institutions within Glasgow in the 80s. Let me tell you, it was hell. It was really a hell. You know, they're desperately underfunded. You know, you're given secondhand clothes, and the staff that are looking after you have no merit to be there. They're not checked. They are now. They weren't checked. You could be a bin man one day, or not a bin man. You could be a criminal, and there's no record and no checks.
Yeah, and
that's what was happening.
And that's a frightening thing too, for somebody on the outside looking into the world that you grew up in. I mean, it's like, wow, in a home situation like that, it just simply is a breeding ground for all the wrong types of people to get involved. And it's one heartbreak after another.
I mean, I really wanted to leave the heavier stuff that happened in the children's home out. But having my own child, I really wanted to speak up about it, and because I'd been to the police, I'd been through, you know, lawyers and all that stuff, and eventually it's been settled. But you know, nobody, we don't have a voice. You know,
no.
You don't have a voice, and I wanted to be honest about what had happened, and although that might hurt me writing it, it might hurt my family reading it, hopefully it'll shine a light on what this was like back then.
Yeah, I think that, you know, we need your voices, because if people who experience that don't speak up and speak out, then things really cannot be changed, because it'll just be business as normal.
Right.
And it was something else. So I do have a little twisted question. So has Aunt Maureen ever come out yet?
No.
Okay.
She passed.
Oh, okay. That's sort of an inside joke. You'll have to read the book to understand more about it. But
I can say, without giving too much away, she was under the thumb of the Catholic faith. So she just didn't have that opportunity, you know.
Yes. Yeah. And I find that our experience, you and I, are the exact opposite. So my father's family is Scotch-Irish, but they're Protestant, and very, very heavily Protestant. And his entire family is just really simply still anti-Catholic. I'm like, we've been here 300 years. Can we just not leave this in the past somewhere?
Yeah. Wouldn't that be great? But even today in Glasgow, you have to be careful what you say. You have to be careful what colours you're wearing. It's Neanderthal. It's stupid.
It is indeed. It is indeed. So, do you still like to swing?
When I take my kid to the park, that's the first thing we go for.
It is the first thing I go for as well, Juano. They were my favorite. It was my favorite playground instrument or whatever. I love swings.
You know, when you get into a rhythm, if you're by yourself and you get into a rhythm, it's really weird. Your mind can just relax and think. It's a strange. It's like rocking yourself. It's a comfort.
Yes.
It's a comfort.
It is. And I find, I remember the higher you go, you sort of feel like you're going to fly. It makes my soul feel free. So
yes, great. Yeah, we do at least once a week. I'm swinging. Yes.
Lovely. And do you own a dog now?
I have 3 dogs. Yes.
I had a feeling you would have at least one. So
yeah. We had 5, but actually we've had 6. But
okay,
you've passed.
Aw. Yeah, dogs show up in. I love the way you describe them in the book. Along the way, you meet every kind of conceivable dog there is. But I already knew from just your description of it that you would like dogs. So that was a lovely thing to read.
I do love dogs.
Wonderful. So have you been on tour with this book?
I have. I've just done Edinburgh Book Festival.
Lovely.
Fantastic.
Well, I hope one day to get to meet you in person. Once again, the book is Slum Boy. It's by Juano Diaz. Highly recommended. Thank you for taking time to chat with me, Juano.
Thank you, Dan. All the best.
Thank you. Thank you for joining me for this week's episode of Out with Dan. You can find more information about this podcast and its host at OutWithDan.com, on Twitter at OutWithDan, and on Instagram and Facebook at Go Out with Dan. This podcast is hosted by Authors on the Air Global Radio Network, and the theme music is provided by bensound.com. Join us again soon for the next episode of Out with Dan.